So I'm going to talk about public transport accessibility and its implication on planning policy in general. So the talk is divided into sort of 4 sections. First, a quick introduction to the Indian context and what are the things that come to mind when we're dealing with issues in India. Then a quick overview of the PTAL methodology. Then some work that has been done to apply PTAL, which is public transport accessibility levels, and its mapping to Indian cities. And then the bulk of the discussion is possible applications to planning policy. So whenever we talk about the Indian context, the key message I want to give is that we have a huge proportion of people relying on public transport. And as you can see from these pictures, it is overstressed like any other public service system in India. And obviously this is due to rapid urbanization. There is a lot of overstress. However, at the same time, we would like our public transport systems to be well functioning. And primarily because it gives the lower income people to be part of a bigger labor catchment and they can increase their income. Sort of mobility improvement leads indirectly to increasing their incomes. So, and of course, we know that the resources are limited, as we discussed in the previous sessions. So we are a poor country and we have limited resources. Given that, what is it that we can do as a starting point? So with that in mind, I'm sort of using this PTAL as a tool to achieve the broader objective of trying to improve our public transport systems. So the sort of key take-home message here is that when we talk about India, on the one hand, we have rapid urbanization, which is overstressing the public transport systems and other systems as well. As against, we are a resource, I mean, we are a poor country. So, these two are two critical things to keep in mind in the Indian context, and more so even probably in the other developing cities of the world. So moving on to the method itself, a very quick historical overview. This method of mapping and measuring public transport accessibility was first started in the London borough of Hammersmith and Fulham in 1992. And over the years, then it got adopted by TfL, which is Transport for London, as a standard method for measuring and mapping public transport accessibility. And apart from London, there are uses in other cities of the UK, US, even Australia, New Zealand, and the Netherlands. So essentially, the method is quite simple and straightforward. So we take a study area or a city, and we have a specific geographic boundary, and you divide the city or the study area into some grid cells. Now, the grid cell is a function of the amount of money you have, to put it very simply. So it's like a resolution of a picture or a camera. If you have more money, you can go for the DSLR, and if you want to zoom in and so on and so forth. But for this purpose, we found a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer grid to be sufficient to take macro strategic decisions at a city level. So once we have this grid, then each point, the centroid of the grid, becomes the point of interest, and that is the starting point. So then a series of steps are sort of carried out. So in context of this points of interest, we have service access points or station access points. So there is a network of routes and there are bus stops and all that. So how accessible these points are from that bus stop, then we can calculate the walk access time, the frequency of buses will give us the waiting time and so on. And after a series of calculation, each dot, each POI, which is point of interest, gets an accessibility index, a numerical value. And then using a thematic mapping tool in any GIS software, we can produce very lucid visualization of this accessibility. So this is how it would look like. So this is now graded into a color scheme. We can apply we can even do a monochrome if that's necessary. So the blue in this case is the poorest and red is the highest. And the one sort of innovation we did here in applying here was to change the AI values to integers or whole numbers. So that makes more sense for policymakers. When we say a point of interest has index of 4, It's not an arbitrary number, but it's in equivalent doorstep frequency, which means 4 buses per hour or bus every 15 minutes, so to say. So that number is relatable, and you can calculate the city average and so on. So this is the mapping output that we get as a first step of measuring and mapping the public transport accessibility. So getting sort of inspired by that London study, we started this work in Ahmedabad in 2014. Then it was done on Surat in 2016. Then 2 more cities were done 2 years later, Pune and Bangalore. And then in 2002, last year, we did Lucknow, Hubli, Dharwad, and Raipur, Naya Raipur region. And we are not getting into details, but each city presented its own different context, and you have to adapt or tweak the model a bit here and there. But ultimately, given the simplicity of the whole calculation, given that basic data, it is able to, I mean, we were able to produce this sort of visualizations. So now coming on to the main topic of discussion. What can we do with these maps? I mean, the question is, so what? I mean, okay, these are pretty looking maps. Now, when we try to interface that with the planning data, so we have population density, job density, land use map, all future, base year and future, land suitability maps, environmental protection maps, and of course the master plan. All these could be quickly overlaid given the sort of GIS framework, and can help us take some fine tune our planning decisions. It sort of provides a decision support system to the planners, if you like. So just going over the possible applications. The first one is obviously you can prioritize the PT investments, which means that if you overlay this with the population density, so you see the bars which are the z-axis is the population density. So we can clearly see that there are areas which are high or tall bars, but the color is on the lower side. So low public transport accessibility. This is where you can focus or channelize the investment. And like a lot of, I mean, even in the UK, they had this TIF, which is Transport Investment Funds. So every city has a fixed budget year on year to be able to pour in transport. So this becomes a quicker way to sort of prioritize budget and do the phasing of the investments. A similar approach can be tried by overlaying the PTAL map with the job density. So in a particular case, there was some data available, not very fine resolution, but at a grid level, for we can make the job density map and overlay it with the PTAL map. The transparency has not come through very well. So the idea is here we can see that there are clusters which are high concentration of job, but are not accessible well by public transport. So again, making the point that you can prioritize your investments better in terms of public transport. The other application that I see possible from this is, informing the parking, the TOD, and the NMT connectivity. So areas which have high public transport or PTELs can be a good candidate for parking reduction. And some cities have tried that. A few years back, I sort of heard Jan Gehl, a famous architect planner for Danish, saying that every month or so they reduced a couple of parking blocks from parking slots from the city center, and no one would notice. So gradually this has done and has been implemented. If you look at the peripheral areas in most cities that we studied, the PTEL was either poor or on the medium side. So these also could become good candidates for the park and ride locations where long distance commuters could park and then ride into the wherever there is a good accessibility of public transport. The other innovation we were able to implement in one of the cities was micro PTEL maps. So as I said again, at the strategic level, at the city level, a square kilometer grid which had one centroid, one POI was good enough. But if you have to take surgical decisions, you need to go a bit deeper. And if you subdivide this grid into two, you get 4 and so on. And if you do 100 by 100 meter grid, you get 100 points of interest. And we tried that for a sample area because it was too much resource intensive in terms of computing and all that. If we take a 30 by 30 meter grid, we get about 1,000 points of interest, and we get a very fine resolution of the PTAL map. And those can be useful when we are talking about on-street parking, which varies by location. It's a complex problem, on-street parking. It could be used in better delineation of the transit-oriented development zones, because if you overlay this sort of map with the cadastral map, which we have the plot information, ownership, and all that, we get more a tailored buffer to the TOD as against the current system of just taking 200 meters on either side of a transit line. So plots are not cut properly, and some of them who should not benefit from TOD start getting benefited, and people who are really near may not be, and so on. So this gives you a better surgical tool to be able to decide the buffer line of the TOD. And also, as we know, the first and last mile connectivity to any PT system is controlled by the non-motorized transport. We can take more focused intervention when designing the footpaths and so on and so on. So the third application we found for PTAL would be locating the social and affordable housing. So in a lot of cases, the city government has its own land owned by them, where they would declare or put social housing. And in a lot of cases, we have seen, and Professor Darshini would probably touch on those issues later on, that there is a mismatch between where people are wanting to live, especially the urban poor, and where their jobs are. So that can be avoided if you have a city level accessibility map in which you can cite your own locations. There are some developers, private real estate developers, who are supplying affordable housing, which is slightly on the lower side, but still market rates. They could benefit from these sort of overlays. And of course, some cities are into urban renewal, where they do infill, housing infill. So which could be horizontal or even vertical, underutilized FSI. So for these decisions to be able to be more surgical, a micro PTAL map would be very useful, is what we are thinking. Coming on to the mobility of urban poor, we again did a study in 2019 about public transport accessibility in Ahmedabad, and we overlaid the slum locations on the PTAL map, and we found that even most of the slums are in the red areas or high PTAL, but it doesn't necessarily translate to higher accessibility. Why? Because these people have variable job locations. They are street vendors, they are construction workers, their offices, they don't go to office like most people do. They are variable, and therefore there should be a better sync between the PT system and their job location. So that is what came out from this sort of study. And of course, one of the key things that one could do is that if cities have LUTI models in place, and this is an example of Simplan, which I had worked with Professor Richini a long time back. So there is at the core of that is an input, which is dwelling units or the floor space and the employment. So these, if we have a zonal map, which each zone is a model input, we can overlay some sort of a future PTAL map if we have committed transport schemes, some project reports and all that, and fine tune the LUTI inputs to the model for a future year. So that, and the last sort of application I see is scenario planning. So cities without LUTI models can also still use this sort of mapping, where this is an example where you, in Lucknow, where you overlay the future PTAL map on the future DP. And as we see here, there is a huge mismatch. They have proposed a huge development, but it is almost zero in terms of public transport accessibility. So these sort of mismatches can be taken care of as early as possible before people start building things. And another case of scenario planning where the transport part was very strong and much more committed than the land use plan. So that can be used as a starting point, and we can adjust the development based on some other scenarios. And this is still to be worked out, but as someone mentioned in one of the presentations today, Frank Zhao, I think, that the smart city concept still lacks clarity, and I agree with that. But in terms of the dashboard kind of ideas that have been promoted, we could use this as a dynamic decision-making tool. Where new routes are added, you get the PTAL map updated, and it's like a front end for the decision makers, which they could use to fine tune their decisions. So just to conclude, I think in Indian cities do lack a strong legacy of data collection in a systematic way. However, I think given the limited data availability and the resources, as demonstrated, PTAL could be a potential starting point in terms of the public transport, which could significantly impact the planning policy decisions. If a city has LUTI models, it can be used to plug into that. And overall, in the newest smart city mission from Government of India, that is still to be explored in detail, but I think it's a thought worth exploring further, that how can that fit into the bigger picture of the smart city planning. So keeping it short, I would probably end here, and any quick questions, clarifications, or we can take it at the later as the host suggests. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.